Welcome to SubExperiment, Episode 8. Today, we're going to work on tweeter pods for my Crescendo Super Tweeters. So I've been working on these tweeter pods for my Crescendo tweeters. So I put the first coat of fiberglass on it, first layer, and I just need to do some trimming. I use the factory sale panel as a template, so I maintain all the factory mounting, glued it into the base of the fiberglass. So what I'm going to do is one of the beauties of fiberglass is no matter how bad you are at it, you can always trim it and patch it and do some things to it, and then get your body filler out and really make it something special. So I'm going to do some trimming here and see if I can get the body filler today, huh? Using a standard Dremel. Never forget eye protection. Now I'm not only cooler, but I'm a hell of a lot safer. Alright, so now we're going to put down some fiberglass. We're just going to use SMD sun flash because the sun is shining and the birds are chirping. So let's, and it's super easy. No activator, which is very nice. So the only thing I really got to do is I'm going to fix this, and I'm going to cap this off, put these in the sun, and they're ready for Bondo. Again, when working with fiberglass, you're going to cut it off, trim it, sand it, body fill it, right? So it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. So we're going to saturate the part. And we'll just stick this baby right on there. And I like to really saturate it. I like to dab it instead of brush, just because the fibers are always loose, right? So remember, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to trim like across here so it's all flat, right? So we're not too worried about any of this stuff. The nice thing about using the sun flash is any UV activated resin is we're not going to have to wait all day to trim this thing down. I'm just going to go set this thing out in the sun and call it good. So we're not building a boat, so we don't really care too much about, you know, the weight of resin on such a little piece. Obviously, if you're building something like something for a race car or a boat or something where weight matters a lot, you know, you may want to use some different techniques. But for a little tweeter pod, the goal is just get the resin on there trim and body work till you got it how you want it. And that's how I want it. So I'll trim all this excess off. But then I'm gonna go set it out in the sun. There we go. So we're just gonna let it cure. So it's been about a half an hour since I put on the fiberglass with the SMD Sunflash, and it's rock hard, ready to work. So I'm just gonna trim off those pieces I said I would. And it's time for some body work. A little stripey. So I'll probably need a bunch more of this, but I like to mix it in little increments just to... It's easier to get the hardener at least somewhat accurate. So I'm going to actually just put pretty much a full coat here, because we're going to sand it down and make sure all the little sides are right. You just slop it on here. Every classic car guy's worst nightmare. We're gonna Bondo the crap out of this thing. So the goal is to get a nice sandable surface. That, you know, we'll have to do this once or twice probably just to get it how we want it. Don't worry about this, you know, the way it looks right now, right? Because we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna sand this. Key is to get body filler everywhere, right? So that we can sand it how we want it. And this top piece, this top part here, right, we're all gonna cut this. This is all gonna get cut out anyway. So not super worried about that. So I use a lot of hardener because I hate waiting. So there we go. Icing the cake. All right, so we'll give that time to dry, and then we'll knock it down and do it again. We're going to do it a couple more times until it's flat and how we like it, right? So we've got a long way to go, but we will get there. So when you first put on your first coat of body fill, you're going to have huge, giant peaks. So what I like to do is I like to start out by hitting it with the file, as you can see, and start to knock down some of these super tall areas. It helps with the sanding effort. You're going to need a couple more coats of body filler always. So your best bet is just to slop it on there and get the low spots filled in and start to make your shapes and get it how you like it. So that's exactly what I'm doing. Probably ready for a coat 2. Gonna fill in some of these low spots and bring it up. All right, these guys are rough sanded, ready for coat number 2 body filler. And we'll be doing this over and over until we get it how we like it. On a second coat, we're not going to put quite as much hardener on it because we need a little bit of time to actually work with the material. So I'm just going to make sure we're good here. Just a little hardener because we don't really care. We want this to be workable for a little while. So we're just going to go in here and fill in some holes. We're going to be a little bit more cautious about our overages here because this is going to be some of our final work. It's not going to. We're still going to have big ridges and stuff, but we're going to try to minimize them as much as we can. Just run your squeegee, spatula, whatever you want to call this thing, over at a pretty steep angle. It'll just kind of fill in the gaps. I mean, you're still, like I said, you're still going to have some ridges. I mean, this is you're still not going to get away from sanding as much as we all would like to. It just doesn't happen that way. If you see anything that needs to be filled in, like the edges there, this is, you should have got it last time, but this is the coat, because the next coat is going to be a finishing coat, and it's going to be very tough. Its job is really just to find little tiny spots that you didn't like or just didn't end up exactly how you wanted it to be. Sometimes if you find a real low spot like I just did, you know, get it the way you want it. If you have to do another coat, body filler, then you have to do it. But hopefully this will be at least close to the end of the line for this one. You know, get all your gaps. And there you go, coat number 2. As you can see, a lot of the divots are all filled in. A lot of the stuff where I'm sure at home you're like, you'll never get those filled in. That looks like crap. It's getting there. Alright, like these babies are going to be all painted up. Look brand spanking new. Now, you just have to let them dry. So obviously the more hardener you put in, the faster it would dry. And as you can see, I wanted to work with it, so I didn't put a ton in. But I put just, you know, this is a chemical dry, so it will absolutely dry. And you can sand this at partial dry. So you can get in here in 20 minutes or so. You can get in here and knock this stuff right off of it, which we're going to do for sure, because that'll save us with the file. So essentially we're just going to putty, sand, repeat, putty, sand, repeat. You know, as you add more and more putty, you know, you don't really have to put as much on, although I'm pretty liberal with it, because you can, you know, you can sand it off, and then you have less high spots and stuff like that. So even the second and third coats, which you'll need quite a few coats, you know, maybe 4 or 5, just until you get it where you want it, right? You will just want to make sure to get any of these low spots. Alright, so you don't necessarily want to push real hard, because you want to lay the material on here and make it over any of the bumps and bulges and on the final coat you'll probably just use your finger, right? Because you'll find 1 or 2 little high spots you don't like, and you'll just use your finger. But I think we still have one more. Like this coat really needs a nice thick one, because I found a few weak spots in the fiberglass that I had to cover and get, you know, all doctored up so it's nice and strong, even though it's not going to hold any pressure, right, because it's a super tweeter. But you know, I want it to be strong and rigid, and at least somewhat durable. So I'm just going to continue to just butter it up. You're going to find holes and little things that you don't like. That's just part of it. And you know, they make a finishing filler you can use, but what I found is just, you know, take your finger and rub it in those little spots, and once it's painted or wrapped, you'll never see it. Hoping this is the last thick coat, because frankly I'm getting tired of sanding. So I think I said in this other video, you're better off just buttering on there and leaving it, because the more you jack with it, like I could smooth this stuff off, but as it starts to dry, it'll pull away. So you're better just sanding it. You can sand this thing. I mean, I didn't use a ton of hardener, but we should be able to sand this thing in like 20 minutes. Good, we'll just let that cure. And we just gotta watch them dry. I'm gonna put the camera on them and we're just gonna sit here together for however long it takes and watch these dry. Once I hit it with the 80 grit, just to kind of get the form, then I switch to the 220C, just all-purpose sandpaper. 220 is about as fine as you want to go because you want the paint to stick to it. So on a paintable surface, about 200 is good. So we're just gonna continue to sand just for a little while longer. Then we're gonna put the first coat of paint, and then all the blemishes should show up, and then we'll be able to hit them pretty easy once we see them. All right, let's throw some paint on there and see where our blemishes are. Then maybe we'll get it finished up in the next day or two. Coming together. Nice and smooth. I see a couple little pits here and there, but we don't want to, I'm not going to hit them now because I'm sure when I paint it, there'll be some glaring stuff that pops out. All right, I'll just get the first light coat so we can see any imperfections. Just the light coat so that we can see any imperfections. And you know, I sprayed it outside in the dark. You know, it was humid. Not a final coat kind of night to spray it. So got our first. Just put a light coat of paint on it so that we can see our blemishes. All right, and as you can see, I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but we have a few. Right, we have little pits and different things like that. So what the next step is, you know, it's not looking too bad overall though. So what the next step is we're going to hit it with some sandpaper, and then we're going to use finishing putty. So this is icing, number 26006. It's about 25 bucks for a bottle like this, and I'm pretty sure this is probably the most popular finishing putty. Essentially what it's going to do is it's not going to create more pits. So we're going to do some sanding. We're going to rub this in the areas that we need it. We're going to build up an area or two, and then we'll let it dry and sand it and hopefully put our final coats of paint on it. So let's get to it. You know, if you're using this as a tutorial to build your own and you want to paint it once, don't do it outside in the humidity in the dark. Or you can, and then, you know, you're stuck with whatever you get. So the goal is what I'm going to do with these is let them dry, and then I'm going to hit them with some wet sand, like 600 wet sandpaper, and just kind of see where the imperfections really stick out. And then I'm going to touch it up with a little bit of probably a little putty if they need it. So I have to say, other than the weird texture because they're outside, it looks pretty doggone good right now. So if they dry and sand up nice, then you know, one more coat of paint, no more sanding, and we'll be able to get them put in. Got our first, just put a light coat of paint on it so that we can see our blemishes. Right, and as you can see, I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but we have a few. Right, we have little pits and different things like that. So what the next step is, it's not looking too bad overall though. So what the next step is we're going to hit it with some sandpaper, and then we're going to use finishing putty. So this is icing, number 26006. It's about 25 bucks for a bottle like this, and I'm pretty sure this is probably the most popular finishing putty. Essentially what it's going to do is it's not going to create more pits. So we're going to do some sanding. We're going to rub this in the areas that we need it. We're going to build up an area or two, and then we'll let it dry and sand it, and hopefully put our final coats of paint on it. So let's get to it. I'm going to use just a 220, right? Because I'm just trying to rough it up and see where my pits are. Clean these babies off here. Just using a little warm water. All right, as we can see, we have some high spots and some low spots, so that's going to really help us. The next couple coats of paint are really gonna look nice. See, you can tell, these are high spots, which is perfect, right? Because that's, the paint will cover all that stuff up. You won't be able to see that. So I decided to put a coat of finishing putty just on the whole thing, just to be sure that that we get these pinholes fixed. I wasn't planning on putting it everywhere, but I'd rather sand it one extra time and have it be perfect than go the slow route and not have it be perfect. Because you never know. I might decide to paint them, or something high gloss instead of the flat black that I had in mind. But I just want to do the best job I can. I'm using a plastic knife. Probably not a tool choice, but you can throw them away. And this finishing putty, it levels out really nicely, so I'm not super worried about it. So this is what it looks like with the finishing putty layer on. Notice how it's like a glossy, smooth. I'm going to sand a lot of this off, but essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it with the 80 grit just to knock down all these high spots. Then I'll hit it with the 220, and then we'll paint it. Shouldn't take very long. So now we're going to cut the hole for the tweeter. I'm just gonna eyeball it. It's gonna be good enough. This is what's going in there. Crescendo Super Tweet. Luckily it's exactly 2.5 inches mounting depth, or mounting circumference, so it should go right on there. There it is. Now once they get painted black, not too shabby. Let's just coat one. We're only gonna give it one sand at least, and give it another spray. But so far, looking pretty good. Coat turned out pretty good. Just gonna hit it with some wet sandpaper in between coats. This is 600 grit, waterproof. And coat, hopefully the last. Looks pretty doggone good. All right, 24 hours to dry. Now we're gonna get these speakers mounted, get the holes drilled. So luckily it comes with some screws. So we're going to drill the holes. Oh, look like Allen wrenches. That's fun. Tweeter pods. Pretty awesome. Now we're going to take the old ones and put in the new ones. And this is the point where if it works, you'll be happy. If it doesn't work, this will never see the light of day. And I will never admit to trying to build these. So this is pretty easy. It's just a little clip. Voila. So I used the stock clips and clamps. So we should be able to go there we go. Tweeter pod. Alright, tweeter pods, just need a little wire. Stay tuned.